don't have much time to get through this. Let's see if I can get this done in under half an hour. Why, hello. Here we are for another episode of Wallace Unchained. I've been busy over the past couple of months, doing a few things, but most importantly, finishing and publishing my second book, The Millennium Wars, Rise of Sion. I'll try and get a good view there so the computer screen's not blurring the image. It's available in the Amazon store in ebook format and print-to-order paperback. It continues on from Alien Incursion as humanity prepares for all-out war with the Qualdroa. Colonel Cross and Sierra 7 are tasked with several operations involving exploration, to espionage and subterfuge, to open conflict with the Drowan Armada. Personally, I really enjoy the space battles I've written. Of all the space battles I've watched or played with in science fiction, the way I've done them in this book, I think, is a nice combination of realistic but insane. Taking what we could do if we had hyperdrives and space shields and laser cannons and seeing what happens when it's applied to a war. With no rules, just tactics. Even when those tactics are a little underhanded. Any science fiction fans will certainly enjoy this addition to the series, as it also envisages what interstellar diplomacy might look like if we ever encountered a peaceful alien race and experienced the differences in their culture to ours. I do expand on our friends, the Callousness, and what their society is like as well. They're very nice people, as you would expect from the first book. The gentlemen in the audience would certainly have a good time if they were a real society. The ladies too, once you let their ways grow on you a little bit. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's get into the main topic I want to cover. We'll be talking about something I can only describe as pathological virtue, a phenomenon that, despite appearances, has the capacity for causing a great deal of harm and is something one ought to be mindful of. Cue transition. So now, what I'm talking about is something you've all probably seen before. It's commonly associated with virtue signaling. However, I want to dig into the undertow of this phenomenon, because it is in fact a form of evil. Not virtue signaling itself, and virtue signaling is not the only form this can take, but evil is where virtue signaling can take you if left unchecked. Or upheld without any sensible, practical reason behind it in the first place, beyond just trying to demonstrate you're a good person. For full transparency, what I'm actually saying now, at this moment, I typed into the script after I took the time to think about this and write everything down. It's just as a reminder, I work independently. I don't follow the philosophical work of other people. I try to analyze things for myself. I looked up the concept of pathological virtue prior to recording just now, just to see if anyone else came up with it. Although I can't find any specific reference to anyone originating the phrase itself, other people have talked about this before in their own way. I've seen that it's been called pathological altruism, but I don't think that's what I'm quite getting at in this episode. Nonetheless, this is my own independent observations, and I do this as part of contributing to the reliability of repeatability. That if I am able to see things for myself that others are also seeing, then we have further evidence that we're getting something right. And yes, I like to show off how smart I am, to prove I can figure out things for myself, 'cause it's fun. So, back to the video. A long time ago, on another social media platform, I said the root of evil is misguided virtue, or virtue without a sense of direction or purpose. Going from memory. I don't have the exact quote. But what I was getting at was this pathological virtue is a thing where someone thinks they're doing something good, but is in fact unknowingly causing harm, or even creating a harmful situation, or excusing it, or in its final form, knowingly causing harm, to be perceived as doing something good. I'll give you an example of how that works in a minute. I promise you it is gut-wrenchingly horrifying. So, let's define some terms. I have used evil as the qualifying standard of which to judge. I'll say I understand evil to be an action or decision that knowingly or callously causes severe harm to another, or knowingly or callously creates a situation for severe harm to take place, including but not limited to malicious intent. And when I say callously, I specifically mean the person didn't care. They just focused on what they wanted without regard for the expense on others. I think we can agree that's what callousness is. It's not ignorance, it's selfishness. The next term we'll pin down is pathological. I understand this to originate from the Latin pathology as the study of illness or disease. The body of the Latin word being path, for suffering or disease, and the suffix ology, for the study of. So, pathological in this case is one's focus on an idea or personal interest is coming from an unhealthy or selfish mindset, or will lead to one. And yeah, these are just my attempts at defining terms the way I understand them. I'm not looking up a dictionary. I did look up a dictionary afterwards, and I'm pretty close, pretty spot on, so we'll keep rolling. Now, for virtue, an ideal or principle that's upheld or practiced with the intent to do what's good or moral. And I'll define good as something beneficial or helpful. And yes, I'll stop here. I know you didn't come to this channel for a thesaurus. So, pathological virtue is an unhealthy focus on being virtuous, in which one attempts to accomplish what's perceived as good without regard for any potential harm or wrongdoing caused in the process. I know it's being up myself, but I do like these definitions for key principles or linchpins that I come up with. It's enjoyable, because it's like constructing a model of something, and you get the satisfaction in the effort of getting the angles or the overall look just right. But there it is. We have what we're talking about pinned down. Now, what does it look like in reality when people are doing it? Well, this is where I think I'll tell you that horrifying example I mentioned earlier. This is obviously going to be a real story, but it's a personal one, and you'll have to forgive me. I have to be vague as to protect the identities of people I once knew. In the unlikely event they ever saw this video, well, if they did, one of them might get upset, because she doesn't know this happened. So, when I was studying for nursing, I was in a large class that was split into two groups. We got given separate timetables, we'd attend the same classes, but at different times. There were some classes that we did all attend together. It had to do with what classrooms were available at each time. A few of them were small, and we of course had to share with other students studying different courses. But during one of the separate classes, there were two students of interest sitting next to each other, a guy and a girl. And they were both friends. Knew each other for a year before this day. This guy, I won't be shy with saying, was a leftist. A vocal one. And the girl was just a girl, but she suffered from epilepsy. It was during the summer, and it was a particularly hot day. Even the aircon in the room was barely keeping us cool. Getting near to the end of the class, the girl was obviously struggling with the heat. She was sweating a lot and fanning herself with her textbook. A couple of us just quietly suggested that she keep herself hydrated while the teacher was speaking. But just as the class was coming to an end, I looked over to their corner of the connected tables and noticed the girl was sitting on the floor. Her legs stretched out, resting her back up against the wall and staring off into empty space. I looked at the guy friend who was originally next to her at the table and just quietly sort of asked if she was okay. And the two of us were really the only ones who noticed this was going on. And the guy, he just shrugged at me with an unaccountable frown like, I don't know. And it's like, okay. So the class was getting ready to leave, and I went over to the girl to ask her if she was all right. And she just sat there completely zoned out, completely unresponsive. The guy friend finally came down to see what was going on, and we took a second to get a response from the girl. Now, at the time, I had no idea that she suffered from epilepsy. I barely knew these two. All I knew is that they were friends and they sat together often. So I thought she was just suffering a fainting spell. I had seen one just as she was at the time, just zoned out, and I said to the guy, I think she's having a fainting spell, and we should call the teacher. Just as he got the teacher over to us, she went into a seizure. Now, I've had enough first aid training to know what to do with a seizure, and it's really simple. You just let them seize. But you try to help them seize safely. That won't result in injury. The spasms they have can result in really strong, uncontrolled thrusts with their body, their head and limbs. If you just let them throw around like that, they could cause serious injury. But you should never try to restrain them from moving. So what you do is clear the environment so that they can spasm about freely, if it's a serious seizure, that is. And you just give them cushioning for their head, which is most important. Don't stop them from swinging their head around, just cushion or lessen the throw with your hands or something soft. So when this girl started seizing, she banged her head on the wall and I put my hand behind her so the impact was cushioned, but she quickly started to lie down, so I caught her and basically had her seizing in my lap. The teacher at this point was directing people to move, and we were so close to the tables that she started throwing kicks into the table legs. Some of the students were trying to move the tables out of the way, but I immediately saw a problem. The L-shaped fashion in which the rows of tables were connected was basically going to make them waste time shuffling the tables around. What I knew is this was a serious violent seizure and we needed open space now. So I rested the girl on the floor, grabbed a pair of the table legs and shoved a whole row of tables out of the way. I actually felt kind of bad after doing that because I kind of aggressively shouted, "Move!" and pushed without much more warning than that. But I knew what I was doing. It was just my first experience, and so I was panicking to rush. Nevertheless, this gave the girl the space to flail about until the seizure ended. It took a while, and that's all you really can do, is wait. She came out of it okay, and the paramedics came to take her to the hospital. They were pretty quick, actually. They were already in the area. But now for the darkest part of this story. Piecing together what happened and how I realized what I witnessed was my first taste of a person practicing final stage pathological virtue, where you cause harm, or in this case, knowingly let harm happen, so you can be recognized as doing something good. You know that guy before, who helped me check if the girl was okay? The guy who sat next to her the whole time, and then shrugged at me as if he had no idea what was wrong with her? Well, he started talking about the event. To everyone. Especially the second group of classmates who just showed up to attend their scheduled class. I remember passing him by and listening to him talk about it. At the time, this bothered me, but in a different way. I was kind of just disgusted that he was effectively gossiping about the event. But I wasn't surprised. He was the type that enjoyed getting in on the gossip. I hope you could tell I'm the type who hates that sort of shit. But this wasn't the most evil thing. I disregarded it at first, but then I heard him answer a question, basically saying that he was the one who helped the girl. He didn't mention me, the guy who did all the work. And afterwards, one of our teachers congratulated me and this other guy for the work we did in helping the girl. And some of my fellow classmates looked at me in a little shock. They didn't even know I was a participant. This guy went around trying to get the glory for himself. Not that I really cared. It didn't really matter. I just thought it was a little underhanded of him. But I mulled this over in my head for a while, wondering why was he so determined to try and take the credit for himself when there were at least a dozen witnesses to the contrary. Like, you're not going to get away with that. Too many people know I was involved, so why even try? And then it struck me. No doubt it's struck you too by now. My participation got in the way of his plan. His plan to knowingly let the girl go into a seizure and come to her rescue. You know, instead of doing the responsible thing and sounding the alarm when he saw it happening. And I know this was happening for at least a minute before I got involved. He wanted to be the hero. And this is final stage pathological virtue, where somebody specifically and only cares about being perceived as good, they're willing to cause harm or let harm happen to be the one to do something about it. And I'm sure you can see what an insidious mindset this is, as to anyone outside doesn't know that's what's happening. They think the hero is being a hero, and nothing less. And this is why virtue signaling is an almost sickening thing to me. Don't get me wrong, I care about virtue. I care about people being good and expressing sympathy where it's warranted. And this should be appreciated. I certainly don't want to discourage it. But some people we know are only doing it for the attention. Look at me, I'm a good person. I care. And like I said, it takes more than one form. We've all likely seen this in political conflicts or propaganda, where people who aren't following along or supporting the virtue signal are the bad people. Don't you care? Insert thing to care about. Do you like suffering? Do you like or support the bad thing that you're a bad person for not opposing like I am right now? This pathological virtue can be used to manipulate. That's probably the most common form you've all likely seen it in. And you might be piecing together now, it's this exact kind of psychology that's tricked us into supporting and tolerating some really unhelpful things. But I want to finish this episode with a strategy that you can use to keep yourself in check and avoid falling into pathological virtue. And it's kind of simple, it just requires practice. Before settling into a virtue or a principle, ask yourself, why do you care? And if you need to care. How important is a thing to you or anyone actually close enough to you to care about? And again, why? What are your reasons? Is it because there's a problem that ought to be addressed? Is it something that will actually benefit others and foster a more civil society? Or do you just want to be seen as a good person? Be honest with yourself. And I know we all want to be seen as good people. This is actually normal to a degree. But my concern is if being seen as good is the very specific goal in mind, and what are you willing to do to get things your way? You know what I say. Everything we do is out of self-interest. So, what are your interests at play here? And it's okay. I do kind things for others all the time, and I know it's out of self-interest. Yes, I want to be seen as good, but it's not for popularity. It's a personal investment in goodwill. I'm good to others because I'd like them to be good to me. I don't go overboard. I do what is the bare minimum for most people, and I go an extra mile for those I love. I have other virtues I hold out of sympathy for others, such as my stances on human rights, but I don't go overboard with them either. I do this for a couple of reasons. One is I want to be seen as standing for something good, because it will make me feel accomplished in achieving a purpose beyond my own existence. And also, because I have a personal investment in our species. If I have children, I want them to live in a decent world that won't hurt them. I know I can't really control that, but I can try to address some problems now so that they don't have to deal with them later. Or at least, just not make things worse. And this pathological virtue we've talked about can leave the world worse off. So I'm careful with my commitments. I advocate, but I don't demand. You'll likely never see me at a protest, certainly not making a nuisance of myself by getting in the way of others and demanding they listen to me. That's pathological. That's wanting your virtues validated so badly you infringe on the rights of others to get things your way. And that's really rather selfish, isn't it? But such people don't care. I'm fighting the good fight, and you're the bad person. We need to be careful with our virtues. They're not unassailable. They're not a one-size-fits-all, black and white, I'm good, you're bad measure of reality. And to close this episode off, I just want to give a reminder. I don't give you guys these ideas to be used against anyone. We need people to be decent to one another. In society, we can't have such a mistrust of any good deed that we hold suspicion there's some kind of foul play. I'd say 99% of the time there isn't. Okay, 90% of the time we've got to be wary of scammers. My philosophical inquiry is for the benefit of the self, for you to look at your own needs and faults to better navigate your own life. Because that's what you have the most control over. Just what you do, not what others do. So that's all I wanted to talk about for this episode. I will shill my book out to you again. Seriously, any science fiction readers watching right now, check the Millennium Wars out. It's a saga that's developing into something special. I know it. So go on Amazon and give it a look. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode.